That's pretty much it. If ever you've done a bar chart or a scatter plot or, heaven forbid, a pie chart, you've visualized your data, right?
Finally, there's someone who understands. When I say to my team I hate pie charts, they just don't get it, and
I want a way
criticize
of
it.
showing information in a horrible way. Oh, have you tried a pie chart?
Yes. So welcome back to yet another Data Strategist podcast. And today I talk to Sam from Sky. He's a Data Visualization Manager. And today we cover off his career. So how he started out in analytics right the way through to where he is today. And we really hone in on data visualization because that's his expertise. And we work out what is it? Why is it important to everybody? We also cover off sort of the advice that he would give to people if they were to start out in data visualization now. We cover off his YouTube channel, which is great. You should check it out. And what people should expect from that. And finally, we cover off sort of AI and the impact on the data analyst role and have just a little bit of a debate about that. Absolutely superb podcast. I really appreciate Sam coming on. Really fascinating to hear his sort of view on things and how his career built up. And if you're interested in Tableau, if you're interested in data visualization, then this is the podcast for you. So let's just jump straight in. Okay, so thanks, Sam, for joining me on the Data Strategist podcast. Now, we've had a quick catch-up, so I kind of know who you are, and we've met on LinkedIn, etc. So what I'd like to do is just hand over to you and just give us a quick intro into yourself.
Cool, thank you very much. So I'm Sam. I'm currently a Data Visualization Manager for L&D at Sky. It sounds like a made-up job title, and whenever anyone asks me what do you do, I break out in a sweat. But my job is basically making sure that everyone within Sky who needs to use Tableau knows how to do it. So through that, we've got various different courses for various different levels, and that's my day job, is teaching people how to use Tableau and being on hand to support with any sort of tricky questions that people have. So that's me.
Nice. Okay, so that's where you are today, but where have you come from? How did you start out in data viz, or whatever we want to call it? Where did you start out?
So it was I've had a really interesting career. So it all started. I finished high school and went into college and was dead set on working in IT. I was like, I want to work in IT. I love computers. And I didn't care what I did or who I did it for, as long as I got to work with computers. So I left college and I got a job at Whitbread. So they own Premier Inn, they used to own Costa, and they own BV Brewers Fayre table like restaurants. I started off working in the call center there. I was working on a computer, so I was happy. But after about 9 months of doing that, moved on to, I got secondment over into the IT team, working on managing an offshore team that set up the till systems within the Whitbread restaurant. So all of the screens, when a server goes up and says, oh, this person's having a cheeseburger, they need the price to come up, they need the stock stuff to be depleted and all that. So my job was to make sure that the guys over in India would set that up correctly. So there was a lot of sort of managing them and then testing it when it was ready for release. And then after doing that for a couple of years, moved more into a sort of project management role within IT there. And one of the things I worked on was launching a voucher validation system. So basically, before this was implemented, we were just giving away discounts willy-nilly. Like, it was like free meals for everyone. And there was like, nice. The audit teams used to hate having to go and do an audit of a site, because they'd go in and they'd be like, look, why are you giving away £5 worth of food? Like, what's going on? So implemented this system that basically meant we would email each person a unique code. That code would then get entered in the till. It could only be used once. They'd get the discount. And then after that was implemented, they decided they actually needed a team to sort of analyze what's going on with our discounts. So we've got a control over it, but we need to know sort of what's going on with it. And by that point, I'd decided that I never wanted to work in IT again. I'd got sick and tired of
Reality,
always,
that's
always being to blame. Like if something was going wrong, it was IT. Like I had a phone that used to ring off the hook on menu launch days. We'd launch a menu, and like there might be like one spelling mistake, and I'd have phone calls coming through from sort of all 400 restaurant sites, and I'm like I know, I needed one of you to tell me. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm done in IT. So moved over into that new team, and was there for sort of 3-4 years, working on sort of understanding what we were doing with our discounts. And to start off with, the reporting was very simple. It was looking at how many times had a free dessert been redeemed and stuff like that. And then as we started to get a handle on that, it really started to evolve into, okay, actually, we're going to reduce the amount of money we're going to give you for doing discounts, but we still want to see the same performance. And all the sites had a loyalty scheme, so we were able to sort of leverage that loyalty scheme, so we could see the people that were coming in all the time. There's no point, say, like a lot of the sort of the customer base of the restaurants were popping in every Friday afternoon for a fish and chips, and the current strategy at the time was pinging literally everyone, like offers. We were like, well, Bert and Ethel are coming in every Friday regardless, so we don't need to entice them in with an offer. But we've got Bob and Jane who never come in. We could send them a deeper offer, so we're spending a little bit more, but anything that those guys spend is likely to be more incremental than people that are coming in anyway. So really sort of tightened up how we did discounting, and got a bit more clever with it, and managed to continue to see a growth in performance and a growth in those sales without sort of spending too much money. So that was good, and that was like that was the moment when I realized that actually sort of I could see the impact of what I was doing as an analyst. So I could literally see, actually, I've saved this amount of money, but I know that my actions have directly made this amount of money. We were using a tool at the time. At the time it was called APT. I think it got bought out by MasterCard, and it might be called something like MasterCard Analytics now. But it basically does like test and control, but in a really clever way, in that it so whenever we used to do it, we would always look at beefeater sites versus beefeater sites. We wouldn't look at the other two restaurant brands we had, but this tool was able to, like, we fed it all of our information. It was like, well, actually, this table restaurant has the same number of seats available, the same number of people going in, week out. So that would also be eligible for a control, to be in the control pool sort of thing. So it allowed us to have a full like test and learn program to see what worked and what didn't. And that's what, really sort of led us to make those savings, and really sort of ignited my sort of love for analysis, being able to see sort of the decisions that I was helped driving, how that was impacting the business.
So when you get, that's kind of like the buzz for an analyst, though, isn't it? It's when you see what you're doing come into sort of fruition, and they're making business decisions based on the analytics you've provided.
Yeah,
that's like the hook, and then you're in. Then you ain't getting out now.
Yeah.
You're in.
That's it. This is your life. You're tied in. You're constantly chasing that buzz. And every year when they were like, right, we're going to reduce your budget even further, some people would be like, oh, I can't work with this. Whereas I'm like, great, I tell you what, give me a $5, I'll see how much I can drive. So that was really fun, and was a really good time. And obviously I was pretty much straight out of college. I was still quite young. I was like 22, 23.
What did you study in college?
At college, I did a BTEC National Diploma in Networking. Because I was like,
really
yeah,
IT heavy,
I was like, mate, give me the cables, I'll go plug them in, let's go. And in a really funny way, considering what I do now, so I finished my my BTEC, and they had the option of doing a foundation degree. So you'd do 2 further years at the college, and then you'd finish it off with a year at university. And I applied to do, on my old UCAS form, I applied to do networking, and then I applied to do web design, and I applied to do, they did like a system support degree. And they gave me unconditional offers for the web design and the system support, but wouldn't take me for the networking one. And I was like, well, I've just done it for 2 years. Like, I can do it. And I got really disengaged with learning. I was like, actually, I don't want to go to uni. I'm done with, I'd found school kind of difficult as it was. I went to college because my mum told me it was a good thing to do. And I was like, actually, I could start earning my own money, and, then I can just buy loads of Xbox games and I'll be really happy. So I got really disillusioned with education. And then obviously now I've fallen, it's come full circle, and I've fallen back into it. But so a BTEC in networking is what I studied. I could have got certified by Cisco to do networking, but that was X amount of money and was only valid for 3 years. And I was like, at that point I was like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of sweets I could have bought. I bought a lot of sweets and energy drinks when I was in college. Basically lived off them, and I really did not fancy doing system support. I'm like, I already do that enough for my family. I'm always, Sam has computers, he'll be able to help. So I don't want to do that as a job. And then after being at Whitbread for 6-7 years, I thought it sort of got to a point where I was like, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I'm well respected around the business. I am good at what I do, but I'm not learning anything new. And then, whenever I'm not learning anything new, I tend to get sort of really itchy feet, not sort of really disengaged. I hate that feeling of being able to do stuff on autopilot. And, I was being able to go in and do what I was doing. It almost got into a bit of a routine. So I thought, need a bit of a change. So I had a look at what was out there, and TK Maxx was where I went to next. So there, TK Maxx over here, TJ Maxx over in America. And I went and worked there in the e-commerce side of that business. So not a lot of people know or knew that TK Maxx also had an online element to them. And the online element is really tricky, because part of the fun and the TK Maxx experience is going in there and rummaging through the shelves to find something that you want. You're like, oh, this is a deal. Whereas when it's e-commerce, when it's online, everything has to have a SKU, everything has to be photographed. There's no you can't get that same experience. But that role was a lot more difficult to see. What I was doing was having an impact, because it was such a large business, and e-commerce was such a small thing of it. Any decisions that I was helping drive, I wasn't seeing that. Once it got through every other line on the P&L, you weren't seeing it. And it was also where the role sat, and this is what I think, until very recently, a lot of companies, their sort of analysis and data analysis teams tended to sit within a finance function rather than a data team. And that's what it's like at TK Maxx. So I'm like, look, I love numbers. I love finding out stories from the data. But in order to progress, they were really keen for me to do my finance exams, become an accountant. I was like, credits and debits aren't going to help me in what I do. Credits and debits aren't the reason I get out of bed. A balance sheet is not my idea of a good time, but being able to look at some data and tell you the story and give you some recommendations on what you should do, that is my idea of a good time. So after 2 years there, I moved again to a company called Travel Republic. So they're owned by Donata, which is the Dubai National Air Travel Association. And Travel Republic was, or potentially is, was one of the biggest sort of performers on PPC marketing. Like they were well ahead of the curve like years ago when it first came out. And because of that, this sort of little company of Travel Republic got bought by Donata and like absorbed into the absolute behemoth that is like Donata Travel. Like if you've been on a plane and eaten some food, it's provided by Donata. Like they have like an absolute monopoly pretty much on anything within air travel. And that was really fun. It was really interesting, sort of from a sort of analyst point of view, coming from firstly restaurants where you could tell that some restaurants would do fantastic Monday to Thursday when it was sunny and when it was school holidays. And then you'd have some restaurants that do really well at the weekends because they were more sort of wet led on bar sales and things, to then moving into retail where you knew it was going to be really busy on Black Friday and then it was going to be really quiet the rest of the year in comparison, to go and work in travel where there are so many moving parts. You know, you've got the whole world. So you've got the Northern Hemisphere that gets really busy at the same sort of time that we might be thinking of going on holiday. Then you've got the Southern Hemisphere where it gets busier at the complete opposite times. And then you've got the different times that people book. And, you know, you have people booking for the Canaries loads in October. And, you know, you see a massive spike in bookings on a Sunday night because everyone's realizing they've got to go back to work and actually want to go back on holiday. And it's like so many moving parts that it was really, really interesting from an analytical point of view to work in, and sort of working with. It was a really interesting role in that you worked with purchasers out in whatever country you were working with. So Travel Republic didn't own any hotels, didn't own any airlines. They would package your holiday by saying, right, I'll take that EasyJet flight and I'll take that hotel in Spain and I'll make that a package for you and do that. So we would speak with our purchasers out in the Canaries and be like, hey, you know, Bob's Motel is going absolutely wild. We can sell more if we get a good deal on it. So can you try and get that for us? And you know, that we'd talk like that and sort of try and set those up. And it was really fun. And for a year, it was like just really engaging, really fun. Sort of no day was the same, and you could really see how you were impacting it. Because, you know, you were getting these hotels and we're like, well, actually, you know, rivals won't sell them on the website. And we're like, well, we'll sell them because it's a lovely place. It's like a hidden gem. And then you'd help strengthen that relationship for the guys that are actually out there, and it made their lives easier. So it was all really good. And then sort of February 2020, we're all sat around the office. And someone had just been on holiday in Singapore, I think it was, and she comes into the office and she's got a bit of a cough and a cold. And the next day, I wake up and I've got like 20 missed calls from my manager, my head of department, the people that sit around me, and I'm like, yeah, you know me, I'm in bed at 10, so you know, I don't know why you're trying to call me at this time. But I listened to the voicemails. They're like, you cannot go into the office. We have had a confirmed case of COVID-19. And we were the first confirmed case in London. Was this poor woman, and she'd like come into the office thinking it was a cold.
No way.
And obviously, at this point, we knew nothing about it, right? So like we were told to call 111. So I called 111. I called them 3 times over the course of the day. The first guy told me, like, that's pretty much it. Get your affairs in order, mate, because you know, you could be, you know, done for. You'd be on a respirator. The next guy was like, yeah, just stay indoors. And finally, the last guy I spoke to was like, how much contact did you have with this woman? And I was like, oh, well, she sits like 4 desks in front of me, and I saw her come in and I saw her leave. That was it. And they're like, yeah, you're unlikely to have COVID, mate. But then, so once that was all cleared, the following week we went in, and that was when the country started to close their borders. So we had a whiteboard up And it started off, we were writing on all the countries that had stopped taking flights from the UK. And then that was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And then by 4 o'clock that afternoon, we actually just had a much smaller list of countries that would actually let us in, because it was easier to do it that way. And so the whole industry massively affected, and the entire job role changed from like being to have this wealth of things to analyze and to impact performance with, to being very much like, well, just make yourselves look busy.
Nothing to do. It's all gone.
You know, there's nothing to do. So got furloughed for 3 weeks, which the first week I thought was the worst thing in the world. And then on the third week, when I got the call saying, "Oh, do you want to come back in?" I was like, "Oh, actually, I have managed to do all those jobs around the house." My wife would write me a to-do list each morning, and in the first week I would get everything done by like 10 o'clock, and then I'd be sat around doing nothing. And then I realized, actually, I can spread these to-do things over the course of the day, and I have stuff to do. It was very it really helped me find myself. You know, most people go on a gap year. I just was furloughed for 3 weeks.
Efficient. That's what you were, Sam. You're really efficient.
Yeah, that's essentially that's my problem through and through. So then when I returned, there was a big sort of there's a big operation to work out how we could refund people. So obviously all the bookings were ATOL protected, so we had to, you know, we could get the money and we could pay back these people, but none of the systems that they had in place were set up for a global pandemic, right? You know, the booking systems were like, you type in the booking number and you say, "I want to refund it." There was no like bulk refund everyone. Plus, obviously, like cash flow wise, you had to like stagger it. So my role went from sort of analyzing whether we should sell Bob's Hotel or Mark's Hotel to which people should we refund, and what's the list of people that, you know, are, you know, 6 months out from today that we can refund. And so my role just became like, because I was good at Excel, it fell upon me. And, you know, sometimes I cursed, I'm so good at Excel. There I am. And I think the moment it really sort of hit home for me was when it was the first week. So I'd done all this analysis and said, right, here's the first block of bookings. We'd refunded everyone sort of up to 12 weeks out, and then we were staggering like week 13, week 14, and doing those like every week going forward. And they're like, "Cool. What we need you to do, Sam, is actually jump on a call with the sheik in Dubai and actually ask him if you can have this money." And I'm like, "Well, why is that falling upon me? Like, you've done the analysis, you've got to ask him." I was like, "Okay." So joined this call, and I was like, I'm like, what do I say? I'm there with my cap out, right? But I'm not asking for a couple of quid. I'm like, "Yeah, you got £16 million to give me, please. I got to do some refunds." And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And I was like, "Oh, that was way easier than I thought." But it was at that point that I was like, actually, maybe I need to think about moving out of this industry, because I don't think it's going to recover for a bit of time. And when it did start to recover, and while I was looking for another role, like the whole landscape had changed. You know, like hotels where we would historically get like thousands of bookings for the summer, we were getting 10s, 20s. And, you know, I felt like an awful person, because I'm saying to these guys, like, "I need you to get me a better rate." And they're like, "We can't, like, these guys have got families to feed as well. They can't drop the price any lower." Like it's all, you know, it's all just like a bit of a mess at the moment. And because you're only getting sort of a handful of bookings, you know, it gone from doing like really high level analysis about being able to see trends of stuff to I could literally like I knew the names of the 10 people that had booked. You know, it was like, I felt like I knew them on a personal level, almost like it was like I'd handmade the booking for them. So it just wasn't sort of, again, got to that point where it got very routine, and I needed a bit of a change. And then by sort of sheer luck, had a message on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, hi, see you're an analyst. There's this role at Sky. Would you be interested?" I was like, absolutely. So for context, I up until sort of mid last year, I lived in Brentford, which is just down the road from the Sky offices, and it is like a city, right? So when you drive past it on the M4, you can see there's all these massive buildings. It's where they film like Sky Sports, it's where they film Soccer AM, and every time I drove past, I was like, it'd be a dream to work there. So when this like came through on LinkedIn, I was like, mate, I've got to go for it and see what happens. And it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. So interviewed and joined, and it was obviously still coming out the back end of lockdown. So for the first sort of 6 months was still remote. I hadn't actually met any of my team. I was purely on Teams. And again, it was sort of like it was the best of the sheer sort of different moving parts that I had in the travel job, but the sheer sort of size of business as TK Maxx and the interesting level of analysis that I'd had at Whitbread. So it's like the perfect mix. So obviously, as you know, like you've got Sky TV and you've got all your add-ons you buy for Sky TV, and the role that I was in was trading manager for upgrades. So I was having a look at the performance of each individual thing. So why were people upgrading to sports and why weren't they? And the same with like kids or HD or movies. And so each of them had their own different shifts. You'd see sports massively like spike when it got close to the start of the season, but in the off season for football, you're not going to be selling much unless there was like a Cricket World Cup on or something like that. So it was really, really interesting. And when I joined Sky was when I first got introduced to Tableau, and I was like, oh, I've heard of this. This is cool. Like the stuff I did previously was either Excel or other visualization tools that weren't as well known, so were a bit clunky. Whereas I knew Tableau was like a big player. And as I'm sort of getting to grips with it, I'm really putting in the effort to get my head around Tableau, because I'm sure that this can make my life easier. And my number one goal in pretty much all the jobs I've had is how can I continue to learn, but also like automate or get all the stuff that I dislike off my plate so I can spend more time on the stuff I enjoy. And so I saw Tableau as a real opportunity to do that. And, when the first few weeks, because there's such a sheer wealth of things to get your head around, I was working late. We had these decks that we needed to pull together every week, and I'm like working late to get them done. And then I'm spending another couple of hours like getting my head around Tableau, because I'm like, actually, a little bit of pain now down the line is going to save me a lot of pain. And it did. And, I managed to build myself some nice Tableau workbooks that, I'd sort of pulled in all the numbers. So I had my commentary in front of me. So when I joined those trading calls every week, I could just read what was on my screen. I didn't even need to think, it then got to the point where I was like, actually, I'm being a bit selfish here. I can do all this. I've taken the time to teach myself this. It's probably worthwhile making sure that other people know how to do this as well. And one of the big things in Sky is everyone's very time poor. Everyone has got, a lot of work to be getting on with. And so, expecting people to work into their evenings to learn how to use Tableau effectively just isn't reasonable. We need to make sure that everyone's got a good work-life balance, which is something that Sky's all over. When the opportunity came up within the data team for this newly formed sort of Tableau Center of Excellence, I leapt at that. And I was like, look, here's all the cool dashboards I've made. Let me teach other people how to make them. And so 18 months ago, hopped over back into data, back into what is essentially IT, even though I swore I never would. And so then sort of teach people Tableau, and the way that sort of the training program had happened previously at Sky is they were using an external company to do the training, so they weren't being able to schedule them as frequently as they might like. And also, they were 2 8-hour days. So if you've got 40 hours in a week and you've got to take sort of 2/5 of your week out to go and learn how to do Tableau when you're going to then come back to more work, just didn't really work for Sky. So first thing I did when we were thinking about how do we build these courses out, and I'm like, right, there's no reason for someone who's just viewing Tableau reports, there's no reason for them to spend a whole day learning how to view a report. You can get through that in an hour max, right? Because it's literally have a look at it, interpret it, here's how filters work. Now go and have a look at your own and you'll pick it up, So we've saved 7 hours out of someone's day there. And then for our sort of for the actual people that are going to be building dashboards and building visualizations, we have sort of 2 courses, one that's 2 hours long, one that's 4 hours long, split into two hours. And again, that is focused on giving people the sort of the flavor for what they can do with Tableau, and then letting them go and apply it to their own data in their own time. But it's given them that good jumping off point.
So, sorry, are these the people that you're teaching data analysts themselves? Is it like a data mesh sort of network, or are they business users?
They're business users more so than anything else. But we have a fair number of people who have come in to Sky with more of a sort of data engineer background, so maybe like working with GCP, so getting the data into a structure, who are then coming on our courses to be like, we want to know, like, what do you do once we've got it to you in a nice structure and it's all clean, how do you guys make it pretty? And that's as we do. But it's mostly for business users. So one of the big things, one of the tricky things that we have to try and get across to people is that Tableau is not a replacement for Excel. It's not really our data warehouse. It's not where you go and get the data from. It is where you use to present your data. So rather than taking this data, putting it in Excel, making a chart in Excel, and then put it into PowerPoint, you can do all of that in Tableau. Like Tableau is like the end point. Tableau is your replacement for PowerPoint, more so than for Excel. And that's a tricky thing to teach, especially in a company like Sky. So sort of I've been here what 2.5 years, and I've already been in 2 roles. So there's a big thing within Sky about being able to move around, which is one of the best things about it. If I really wanted to, if I wanted to go and present Sky Sports, I think I'd have a bit of a fight with Jamie Carragher. But if I really wanted to, I could push for that, and they would try and make it happen. They're really big on that, and they're really big on people having a really good understanding of the business. But the downside of that is you don't have anyone with like retained knowledge. So a lot of we have a constant feed of people come through our training courses. They're always like fairly full as well, because people are constantly changing roles. So people constantly need to learn how to do Tableau again, because the person who came on the course 6 months ago has now got a new role, and someone else has got to pick it up, and they've walked into this dashboard and been like, I don't know what to do. And when people don't know what to do, they're going to default to what they do know, which is chuck it in Excel, get it into PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And it's been a really tricky thing to sort of land. And there's been sort of numerous attempts at trying to set up like communities and things like that haven't really worked, because they haven't had the right sort of emphasis behind them. We have a champions program where different people around the business who are sort of like shining examples of using it, we pull them together, and we're like, right, you guys are like the guys that are promoting Tableau, so show people what it can do, because they know their subject area, and they know the area of the business they work in. They're much better at promoting it than we are. Sky is a massive company. Like when I first moved over into this role, I thought that my previous department, trading, was like all there was in Sky. And then I remember sort of 2 weeks into delivering these courses, I was going around the room and I was saying, "Oh, so what do you do?" And this guy's like, "Oh, my job is to make sure that the satellites that help beam our signal, my job is to make sure they're still in the sky." And I'm like, that really seems like me counting how many sports sales we've done. Like, seem not important at all, you know.
Not technical
And
at all.
yeah, and I'm like, and you know, so we have these champions who then know their area, know the data they're working with to really push it forward. But the first time we launched that, the guy who did it before I took it over put a meeting in with them like once every 6 months, and then was wondering why they weren't engaging with it. And I'm like, you've got to give people, you know, you're asking them to do like a side of desk activity, something a bit more than their day job. You've got to give them reason to want to do that. So now we have our monthly meetings. We let them know if there's a new release coming out. We let them know if we've sort of heard anything from Tableau in terms of like what's coming up, or if there's a new feature that I think is particularly cool. I will go through a run through and be like, hey, in a couple of months time when we launch this update, you'll be able to do this. And you know, it's that sort of that give and take of, you know, we also give them opportunities. If they want to, they can give a go at running a session like we do. So if they think they can do it better than me, they're more than welcome to. I'm like, you know, I can schedule more courses in if you guys want to do it. So it's all about sort of making sure that while they're doing what we need them to do, i.e. promoting Tableau, they're also getting something from us.
So do they so when you've trained them, do they just use the Excel data that they've got and then put that into Tableau, or is there sort of a live data feed that comes in? Because what I'm thinking about is, you know, what about single version of the truth? That's going to be quite difficult if you've got 100 people with their Excel spreadsheets creating reports. Which one's right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that one?
Yeah, so the way that it's set up, and there is a single version of the truth, and that sits on GCP, and then they connect into that. Obviously, there's a lot of things, you know, like old habits die hard, and you know, one project that I've been working on, there's a guy who spends like a week of his month just getting the data he needs, then pull into a report, and he gets sent it in pretty much every file format you could imagine. Some are like just CSV files, some are Excel files. One of the ones he gets is an image that he then has to transcribe, and the image is a screenshot from Excel. And I'm like, if that was me, the first email I'd have sent is back to that person, been like, just attach the Excel, mate. That'll do me. So
that's painful,
you know,
to hear that. It's painful.
I honestly, I spent a good 5 minutes just sat in my chair, just like, and you could clearly see it's Excel. Like you can almost see like the letters in the column at the top, and I'm like, I reckon they're pulling your leg, mate. But the vast majority of the data is a sort of single version of the truth, where, you know, you always have this in every company. Like different departments will tend to look at different metrics or call metrics different things, and that's a particularly tricky thing. Especially like I'm okay because I've worked in trading, so I know what people will call certain things. But some of the other guys in my team, like they'll like hop on a coaching call, and they'll be like, you know, you're calling it. So I would call something downgrades. Some people might call that churn. It's the same thing. It's like how many customers have left or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, but they're calling them different things. And then if they're like so used to calling it churn and they're searching the data set and they're not seeing anything called churn, they're like, well, this must be wrong. And they completely disengage with it. So one of the trickiest things, I think, for someone in my sort of role, or anyone in a data role, especially like the data engineers, is being able to communicate with the business users in a way that both parties can understand. Like I've seen it multiple times. You have, you know, the end user calling things one thing and having an understanding, like they understand all the core concept of how something works the same way that the data engineer does, but they may as well be talking French and German at one another because they're just not talking the same language. And you hop in the call and you're like, okay, they mean X and they mean Y, and then they both go, oh yeah, well, we're talking about the same thing, and you're like, yeah. And so I think one of the most important things is always try and understand your business and your end user, like in terms of what they're trying to get to, what they're wanting to do, and the wacky names they have for things. You know, they have wacky names. Everyone has wacky names for things. You know, think about what you call your TV remote. Yeah, I guarantee you everyone calls their TV remote something different. It's the same in business.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of a good data analyst, though, is to combine those two elements. So we understand what the data engineers see, but we also understand what the customer wants to see, and we get the terminology. We understand the whole data flow right the way through, and it is that middle piece between data experts in engineering to what business users want.
Yeah,
That's really fascinating. I think, you know, I'm still thinking in my head, how do you manage that as a company? Like, how do you operate like that? Because that's really fascinating. Because I've always come across companies that are where they have this sort of approach to everybody's got a spreadsheet. They never really understand what's really happening in the business because you know, you have the caveat problem. You have sort of the discussion we just had now. I'm interested to know how an executive or leadership team can function when there's a potential for not knowing the same thing.
Absolutely, and it's one of the it is one of the things they're really trying to stamp out. I mean, a prime example is when I was in trading, we would have our forecast for the year, or our budget for the year. We'd then have our forecast for the next quarter, and then we would switch round to the latest view. So the sort of 3 months or 3 weeks into the quarter, they'd sort of redo the forecast, say, actually, we've seen there's going to be we've seen United Liverpool is going to be on TV, so there's going to be a big uptick. And the different RTMs, the routes to market, I worked in upgrades. You then also had like new business, and like people that were working on trying to get broadband customers on to become Sky customers. Everyone would get their own different targets, and sometimes you would get targets at different times. So I might get mine in week 5, and the other teams might get theirs in week 6. So then when we pull together a consolidated spreadsheet, my number's already like 200 different from theirs. And then it's like, right, so which one's right, which one's wrong? And, you know, there have been times when I'd go into a meeting and I'd be like, yeah, really good performance. And they're like, actually, no, your forecast had changed. Did you not get the email? And I'm like, what email? Oh, we emailed you a spreadsheet with it on. I'm like, great, probably got lost in the other sea of emails I've got with spreadsheets on. So
yeah,
there is, there is always that element, especially in a business as big as Sky. But, you know, with what they're doing, there's like a massive focus on getting people to become more data literate and to get that data into a good place. And, you know, utilizing systems that we already use, like we already use a financial reporting tool that we can link to in Tableau. So why are we pinging around spreadsheets with that information on? We can just pull it straight from source, and then it's put in once and everyone gets the same number at the same time. And, you know, it's, as I say, Sky, it's an eye-wateringly large business. So there's always going to be things that slip through the cracks. Like my old head of department would always call Sky a business of businesses. And it really is. You know, there's so many, you know, different areas that, you know, you could very easily like work in one area the entire time you're there and not poke your head out and see the other areas. It's only
you know,
in the role that I'm in that I get to see that.
What you're really dealing with is different cultures within different groups of people and different sets of data literacy, different agreements on how data should be presented. It's a whole raft of different problems you're facing when you're trying to deal with lots of small sort of entities within themselves. It's a really big challenge. And I think one of the other challenges we face in data is that people think we hate Excel. They think we're, you know, Excel anarchists. We're going to burn every Excel spreadsheet, but it's really not that case. And I think, how do you overcome that in Sky? Is that sort of or how have you overcome it personally, I guess?
It's, you know, I will always have a fondness in my heart for Excel. There was a time when my entire life was run off of Excels. You know, my personal budget was in Excel. My diary was in Excel. Like if I could put it in a wax and conditional formatting on, I would.
It's in there. Yeah.
It's a really tricky one. I think my current approach with it is helping people see that I'm not trying to get rid of it. Like Tableau is not going to replace Excel. Tableau is just the end point for your Excel. So rather than having to mess around with it to make a chart within Excel, you can just pull that into Tableau. If you set everything up well, then you can you can pretty much replicate your Excel, because one of the big things, and I think one of the big sticking points, is people are used to seeing things in a certain way, and they know how to do that in Excel. They might not know how to do that in Tableau. And because of that, that's definitely why people think that I have an aversion to Excel, because they're like, oh, it's not blue and orange like Tableau is. And I'm like, no, it's because actually it's a lot easier to show your data in Tableau. And but because their manager might be asking for it in a very specific format, and they know how to do it in Excel. They don't know how to do it in Tableau, so they'll just default to doing it in Excel. So my big goal is to show people how you can do similar stuff in Tableau. And there's a guy that we did some work with, Steve Adams. He recently spoke at the Tableau conference, and we'd worked with another couple of people to talk about how you can recreate a P&L within Tableau, which, as someone who uses Tableau, I know that that's not an easy feat, and I know that they worked on it for ages. But Steve himself, a background of being an accountant, working in Excel a lot, and then seeing how good Tableau is, and knowing that one of the ways to bridge the gap is to explain, well, this is how things work in Tableau that are similar to Excel, and how you would do that. And it's also a really good, because people are so familiar with Excel, it's a really good sort of teaching tool to be like, right, this is how a VLOOKUP works in Excel. This is how it works in Tableau and what it's called in Tableau. So it's not quite the same, but this is how you'd get to the same result. As to whether we'll ever be able to get people to think that I don't hate Excel and I want to get rid of Excel and the GCP is the best thing ever, I don't think we'll ever be able to stop that, unfortunately.
That's not our reality. Our reality is we're stuck in this two worlds of Excel versus any sort of data tool ever. That's interesting. So you're at Sky, you're now in the L&D sort of part of trying to teach people what data visualization is. So what is data visualization, and why is it important to customers or businesses, essentially?
So data visualization, whenever anyone asks me what my job title actually means, I just teach people how to make graphs. That's pretty much it. If ever you've done a bar chart or a scatter plot, or heaven forbid, a pie chart, you've visualized your data. Right?
Anyway, there's someone who understands. When I say to my team I hate pie charts, they just don't get it, and they
want a way of showing information in a horrible way. Oh, have you tried a pie chart?
Yes.
I got sent one. The other day that was a pie chart that was showing sort of diversity in the workplace, and they had included like loads of different things, like different categories. So they showed the male-female split, but had also shown like ethnicity split. So, you had like African-American white woman. And I'm like, hang on a minute, one of these is not like the other. You can't put that in a pie chart. They're two separate things. Now you've just confused everyone,
when you get a pie chart that's got more than three things in it, it becomes really impossible to tell what the hell the slices look like, because you're looking for proportionality.
Yeah.
And if it's just like squidged up and there's like loads of, and then people put the labels on them, they're the worst thing in the world. Right, we're going off topic.
Yeah.
Let's try and get back to it, right?
Yeah.
What is data visualization?
Data visualization is literally any time you have changed your data from being a pure table of data to being in a graph, or so like a bar chart, a line chart, even a pie chart is data visualization. It's a way of being able to show your data in a way that is much more digestible than having a look at a table of data. And one of my favorite things to do in a training session is I put up a table of data and say, right, can you tell me if this particular product is performing well, or a sales going up or a sales going down? And everyone looks at it and they and they are. One person I had just like under their breath went, oh God, because they just knew they couldn't answer it. You then say, right, let's put this into a line chart, and then straight away you can see whether it's going up or whether it's going down. And it's taken you like 0.5 of a second to be able to see that. Because we're humans and we're quite visual, we can see if the line's going up, that's probably good. We're used to seeing that, so we can like call on that to be able to get the message across way easier. I did recently. We had a Tableau day, and I did a whole presentation about cognitive load, which is usually used with teaching in terms of sort of how much stuff can people retain in their sort of short-term memory before committing it to long-term memory. But it also works really well for when you're putting together a visualization. So, something like a bar chart, people have seen since they're in school. So they're able to tell, actually, if this bar is tall, that's probably a good thing, right? Whereas, something like a pie chart with more than 3 slices, as soon as you've got someone going, or leaning in slightly, the number of times I see that in presentations, you see someone on the camera go, and you're like, right, that's it. get rid of that chart, because this is not getting across the message. But it allows you, like, data visualization allows you to see trends, allows you to see outliers. If you had, let's say you had a list of customers and you had their sales performance and their profit performance, and you just had that table, and you're going down there and you're like, well, actually, right, that number's high, but that number's low. Maybe that's an outlier. If you put that on a scatter plot, you've got your sales coming across one way, you've got your profit coming down the other, and you've got a little dot for every single customer. You'd be able to straight away say, right, what's going on with this guy and what's going on with this guy? So, that's why it's important, because it cuts down the sort of time that you're spent guessing or wondering what something is, and it allows you to, as an analyst, much easier get your point of view across, and get your story across. I would always have sort of facts and figures coming out of wazoo when I needed them, but sometimes you can just show, somewhat your manager's managers, the head of the business. You can show them a chart with a big red line, and they instantly know that this is bad. So it's speed, it's efficiency, and it's the way that things should be going. And with Tableau, why sort of the next step on from you, so you've got your data visualization, which is making your pretty charts. You've then got your visual analytics, which is where you drill down and you have your dashboard, and you're like, right, I can see that my sales of tables is terrible, but if I then click on that in the chart, it's then filtered these other 3 charts to have a look at just that, and then I can see which customers have driven that, and then I can say, oh, well, actually, is it maybe because we're discounting too much? And then you can hop into that. And it takes I always describe sort of being an analyst as a bit of a cycle. You come up with a hypothesis, like something has happened. You either ask the question, you come up with an idea of performance doing this. You then get your data, you then analyze the data, and then you find out if you're right and you're happy, or you find out that you're massively wrong. But either way, there's either going to be another question or you're going to have another hypothesis, and then you're back in that cycle again. And with data visualization, what you're able to do is you're able to think about the questions you get asked. This is exactly what I did when I was in trading at Sky. I get asked the same sort of 5 to 10 questions every week. So let me build a dashboard that I know I can quickly get to all of those questions, because sometimes I might not get asked the question. So I don't need it like right in front of me straight away, but I need it within 3 clicks. So if I click on something, it's going to filter down, so I can then click on something else and filter down that chart and instantly be able to see what it is. And that's where it becomes really powerful, and that's why it's important. Is that speed, especially in any business that is moving at pace. You don't want to. Gone are the days where you could spend a week in an Excel doing analysis. Like, they need it yesterday, and this is the way that you can do that.
Do you have many sort of people ask you to create a visualization? You show them the trend, you show them the chart, you show them how it looks. It looks brilliant. You're really happy with it, and then they always want to drill down to some sort of tabular format that they can export or take away.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first moved over into my new role, I did a bit of work for my old team, where I was like, look, I'll build you the same sort of dashboards that I was using to make your lives easier. And every single requirements call I had with them, they were like, yes, but can we have the tabular form as well? So all of the dashboards I built are sort of like half and half, right? You've got beautiful visualizations that I've slaved over. I've got dual axis. I've got bars with little Gantt bar toppers on top that are just a slightly darker shade of whatever color it is, right? It looks beautiful. And then underneath, you've just got big, ugly table of data. But that sets them on the road to be like, oh, actually, I'm getting the same information there, but I can take that in quicker than from the table. And actually, I just need the table because my boss is making me export it to Excel anyway. If that's what it takes, because you can't expect them to go cold turkey from no more tables, right? Like, believe me, if I could stop Tableau making tables and enable that feature in Sky just to see what happened for a week, I would. But getting people on that journey and being able to show them, look, you can't see anything in this table quickly, but you can with this chart. It's a way of guiding them to seeing why data visualization can really help them and make their lives easier.
I mean, look, it's fascinating to hear, right? Because it doesn't matter what industry we're in. We've never been in the same industry, yet we have the same experience. And it doesn't really matter about the culture of the company, because the company may want to become data-driven. They may want to have this sort of data visualization and analytical trends, the works, but they all seem to still be on that journey. It doesn't matter who you are, of moving away from the tabular view of the world and moving into sometimes it comes down to trust as well, right? People don't trust what they're seeing. So I think it's amazing to hear that all the industries that still exist today are still on that culture and literacy journey. It's fascinating.
Definitely.
I think it's
Definitely
really interesting.
And I was talking with the guys today, and I think that one of the sort of main drivers in that, I think every company has this idea that they want to be highly analytical, highly data driven, but there's still a lot of people who are old school, want to work in Excel, want to see stuff in PowerPoint. And I think that all companies, it might be a very long time until they actually get to that vision, because if you're always going to have someone, if like, as an analyst, if I know that eventually someone's going to ask me to put this into a PowerPoint, I'm not going to spend my time building a dashboard, because I know I just need the tabular to whip it into Excel to do that. So until the whole sort of mindset changes from the very top down to the very bottom, it's always going to be tricky to get to that sort of place. That's not to say that like the rebels in Star Wars, there are pockets of people who like straight up refuse to do stuff in PowerPoint.
You are right. Yeah,
and
that will always happen.
Yeah, and the more people like that, and I'm noticing it so much with like the grads that come in. The more junior people that come in now, they've sort of grown up being around this sort of stuff, and I look over what some of the grads are doing. Like a lot of the time, they're like data engineers, and they're there and they're coding stuff. And I'm like, he looks like Neo from the Matrix. And I realize, man, I am old. It's got to the point where I'm like, I don't quite understand this bit of technology, and I'm like, oh god, I'm just moments away from using my phone with one finger and one eye closed. But I think like these guys are coming in. And, especially with like the hot topic at the moment, like AI and all that sort of thing, they're going to be more engaged with a different way of doing things, and they're not going to want to do stuff in Excel when they know that they can do it easier. I think I was actually born in the wrong generation. These people that are far younger than me are way more into the, working smarter, not harder, like I am. I should just be younger. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, though. It is, it probably is a generational problem, maybe. That's an interesting thought on it, that it'll move with the generations, Could we see in like 50 years people still use an Excel in the way it does now?
I just don't
imagine it.
I
But
can't
then something will replace it. I think that's the problem. Something will replace it. People will be looking at Tableau going, why the hell are you still using Tableau? Why the hell are you using Power BI? So these things will continue. I just think the conversation may change. That's really interesting. I think what I'd like to talk about is, we've talked about juniors coming in, but say somebody has just started as a data analyst, or they want to become a data analyst. What advice would you give them about data visualization? And sort of like, think about the thought process that you go through. I've had discussions around color palettes and how important they are, and what type of chart. We just discussed pie charts. What type of chart to show information. What advice would you give to anybody just joining into this?
I think the number one is have a play and see what works. You will be surrounded by visualizations of data in your day-to-day life. You only have to turn on the news and they're showing you a line chart showing you inflation's going through the roof, or you watch the football and they're showing you possession and it's a stacked bar and it's moving along. So you'll be surrounded by that will give you ideas of what you could do for your particular data set. So first thing, have a play. Secondly, like, you can show the same data in loads of different ways depending on what you want the story to be, almost, and as an analyst, telling the story is part of your role. And we had a really interesting talk from Andy Cockreeve. So he's a Tableau evangelist, that's the one. And he gave us a brilliant talk around showing time. And so as soon as you think I need to show time, you think I'm going to show it as a line chart. And this has been done since, like, I don't think it's as far back as the Middle Ages, but that sounds good. So we'll go with that. So, and it's never changed. It's never sort of progressed from there. But, even something as simple as, like, within Tableau, when you pull in your time series, if you split it in a normal order, so like year, month, day, it will show you a line chart. If you switch around your day and your month, it will then show you that same chart, but Monday to Sunday split by month. So you'll then see your sort of shape in the weeks. So you're still using the same data, you're still using the same pills on the view, but you're able to see a different story almost. So trying sort of different charts with the same data is another way of A, learning how it works, and B, seeing if there's like some nuggets hidden within that data. And I think in terms of sort of color palettes, like, if your company has a color palette they want you to use, just make sure it's not too loud. I'm not saying anything about Sky, but our color palette is the Sky gradient, which is a rainbow gradient, if ever you've seen the logo. So that can sometimes be quite loud, but even if you just drop the opacity of your colors to like 60, 70%, so they then just get a bit lighter, you're still using the same colors, but it's just a bit easier on the eye. And, use color sparingly is really, if you can get away with not using like a branded color scheme, maybe if you've got a bar chart and you're showing like sales of something, or if you've got your time series, and all you really need to color is your highest and your lowest, so you can draw the eye to them quickly. That's the main reason for using color, is to draw your eye to it. That's not to say that as a data analyst you're never going to be asked to build a KPI tile that is green or red based on whether it's over or below 50%, and you will. But there's ways
that goes back to that culture thing, right, where people are still used to seeing those rag statuses, and that's what they want to see, and you can't get away from that.
And there's brilliant ways around that. So, previously within Excel, you'd have your conditional format. I'm a big fan of conditional format, and don't get me wrong, but that colors the whole cell, right? Whereas when you're visualizing the data, if you do have to do a table and you want to show that something is good, bad, or indifferent, you can just add that as a small icon. And it's still going to be green, red, or amber, but it doesn't have to make the whole thing amber. So you're not suddenly, some spreadsheets I've seen in the past, like they've colored like the whole row like that color, and you go in and you're like, oh my god, I better not scroll too quickly or I'm going to give myself a headache. So use color sparingly, use sort of grid lines and axes lines sparingly as well. Imagine that when any dashboard or any visualization you make, imagine you're printing it on like a sheet of gold paper, and you want to use the bare minimum amount of ink, because then you will really focus on what is important and what you're trying to portray, rather than showing everything. Like if you whack labels on, just have them on the min and max values, or the values that you want to talk about. If you're only talking about July, just show the value for July. Don't show it for every month, because I can see if you've got a bar chart, July's the highest and you've got the value of that is 60,000. I can see that everything else is below that, so all of that is less than 60,000. I don't necessarily need the labels for the story that's trying to be told. And the main thing is practice, because like you will be able to see things that you like and that you don't like, and go from there. And then once you've sort of learned everything that you can do through practicing, that's when you can hop on to the likes of Tableau Public and have a look at other types of visualizations. In newspapers and online and stuff like that, there's always visualizations, and you can be like, oh, how would I go about building that? And then you can just go and learn that, and then you end up with a massive arsenal of charts and things that you can build. And then one day it all just clicks, and someone says to you, hey, I want to see a chart that's showing me what percentage of people enjoyed my training course. And you're like, great, well, what I can do is I won't do a pie chart, but I'll do a donut chart, and we can have a nice red bit and a nice green bit. And it's things like that. So you like just straight away can pull that sort of out your hat as this is what I can build.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest advice you could probably give anybody is, if they're Tableau specialists or want to become Tableau specialists, is to go on to your own YouTube channel. Bit of a self-plug here now, mate.
That's a great plug. That is, yeah, absolutely. So I've got my own YouTube channel. It's rather be Visin, because the whole shtick is I would rather be Visin than doing anything else. But my sort of main goal with that is, as I was learning Tableau, I utilized the likes of Tableau Public, the likes of YouTube, the Workout Wednesdays, the Makeover Mondays, so much, because it's just such a great way to learn. So your Makeover Mondays that's a really good way of being able to practice with data, because they give you a data set and they're like, here's the original visualization, how can you make it better? And so you just have a play with that. Workout Wednesdays are like, here's a really crazy dashboard that someone built, can you replicate it? And it's just a really good way of practicing and getting your head around it. And so after taking so much from the community, I felt it was only fair that it gave back. I'm making loads of videos internally, I get a lot of questions from people internally, or how do I do this? How would I go about doing that? How do I do a count if in Tableau? It's well easy in Excel, but how do I do it in Tableau? So I felt it was only fair that I gave back. So I thought, right, I'll start a YouTube channel, see what happens. And it really is, as potentially sad as it sounds, it really is just like, I do it for the love of it. Like, I love like working in Tableau and building out visualizations. And I always start off my courses, it's really corny, in Sky saying, I'm trying to get you to love Tableau as much as I do. And everyone like laughs. And I'm like, no, genuinely, I really enjoy it. And it's all the sort of, a lot of the stuff that I cover on my channel is going to be tips. And it's all stuff that I wish I knew at the start of, just when I first started using Tableau. Some of it is, stuff that I learned fairly recently, but it's like, hey, if I'd have known how to do that at the start, it would have made my life so much easier. And even things around, like, considering that the vast majority of like learning Tableau have been self-taught with sort of these guides that have been out there. It's all sort of things that you realize that, I was able to get to what I wanted, but I was going about it in a very, very long-winded way. And there's like easier way to do things. So anything that I can do to sort of help people pick that up, help people, do things faster, understand things as well, then I'm happy to do so. And I'm also, as well as the tips, I'm, recording myself doing the workout Wednesdays. I've done 2 so far, and thankfully I didn't find them too difficult. But I did a live one. I did a live one in work a few weeks back, and got half hour in, and I was like, I know that I'm not going to be able to solve this in the hour that I've given myself. And I've got like a whole bunch of people on camera, like watching me do it. And I'm like, I am sweating because I do not know what to do here. But I think that's really important. I think it's really important for people to see that. I think too many times you watch I think, in moderation. I think for a tip video, you're not going to see me sat there going, oh, I don't know how to do this. But for the workout Wednesdays, I think it's really important to see someone who, not being big-headed, but is pretty good with the tool, get to a point where they're like, oh, how would I do this? And then see the steps that they take in order to get around it. Because
it's something you don't see, right?
Exactly.
When you see YouTube, it's a lot of, oh, well, you just do this. Okay, well, what if I can't do that?
Yeah.
And you never see it. So I've seen a few of your videos. I think they're great. It does help the community. It does help people just think about how to do things simpler. The curve of people when they start out, juniors do things really simply because they don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
Someone who's just like mid-level does it the most complex because they want to show off that they are complex. And then seniors want to do it as simple as they can again. So you're on that curve. And I think it's really important that we, as data people, help each other out as much as we can. And what you just described there of, if it fails, it's okay. This is how I would go and solve it. It's not a problem. It's not a slight on you or anything.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Throughout my career, I have learned way more from the times that I have messed up than I have from the times when even down to like doing these courses. So, the first few courses we did, pulled together sort of an idea of what we should do, ran them, got the feedback scores, and people were like, I didn't have a clue what was going on. Great. Now I know that I've actually pitched that way too high, and I just need to, maybe introducing level of detail calculations in the first 5 minutes was a mistake. And it just helps you improve. And I think one of the questions I get all the time is like, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, because I have not managed to do this more times than I've managed to do this correctly,
Yeah, well, people say that, or most of the leaders or thought leaders say that you never really learn from your success. You learn from the 1,000 times you failed before you actually succeeded. So
absolutely,
it's true in data. As much as people, probably say that they're experts, they only became an expert because they had to fail so many times and do the most repetitive tasks ever until they could automate it, until 100%. They got where they are.
Yeah, and it's a continuous thing. Like, you're always going to be learning, and if you're not learning, then you're doing something wrong, and that's where you're going to find yourself 10 years down the line still saying that Excel's the best thing ever.
Exactly. So we were talking for an hour now, and it's been amazing. And I think the one question I always ask people is around AI. It's coming. The big wave is coming. It's going to happen. We're on the preface of another technology boom. So I just want to get your thoughts on it. AI and the impact on data analyst roles. What do you think?
I'm really looking forward to this, because I have some big thoughts on this.
Uh-oh.
I other than the fact that AI is the hot topic at the moment, like, everyone's going mental about it. You mention the name of something new, and someone says, "Is this Gen AI? Is this a new AI?" Like, no, it's just the name of my new barber's that's opened down the road that I was talking about, actually. But I think that AI is really, really good for the sort of things that I try and do all the time. So automation, doing the mundane things that can be done sort of by a robot. Where I think it will probably struggle for a while is being able to add in that additional context for a data analyst. So as I was saying before, like, I knew when I worked at Whitbread that there'd be certain sites that would have a fantastic Friday afternoon because they were right near an old people's home, and all those guys were going in for efficient chips. There's certain information that AI just might not tie up, like, contextually with the data that it's got in front of it. I've seen it way too many times. If you think, when people are looking at data, and a prime example was, we were looking at some data for Santander bike hires. We were doing something in within like a challenge thing within Sky, and we were looking at this data, and there was 2 days where there was no hires, and we were like, "Oh, the data's wrong." Like, that's the information we've been fed. Like, the data's wrong. We then went off and Googled and found out that it actually turned off for those 2 days because they were changing them from whatever the sponsor was before to Santander. And had we fed that data into an AI, it would have gone, "Oh, there was nothing here." And we wouldn't have had that sort of that human side of being a bit inquisitive and going and finding out. Obviously, as it develops, it will be able to pull in that stuff and pull in that contextual information. But I think, judging from how we've seen how difficult it has been to land data visualization, I think if we start telling senior people that actually this is all done by a robot, they're going to be, "I'm not going to trust it until it's come out of a human's mouth."
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think the counter argument to that is that if Microsoft have launched ChatGPT, right? And they own OpenAI and Bard, people have that innate trust with it. So when they release an algorithm that says your performance is X, right? If it comes from Microsoft, people are going to go, "Oh, yeah, I trust that." But if it came from us, the people who wrote the code, they would go, "Yeah, I don't think so." But it depends on where that source comes from. I think what you picked up on, though, is data quality. Right?
Yeah.
Data quality will stop AI from removing these mundane sort of tasks. I think that's going to be the biggest blocker. But as soon as people become more systemized, as in more of our interactions are online through a system, then that goes away because the system generates it. And that's a big of a scary thing. But visualization, I think, is that's a difficult one to automate.
I think it's a difficult one to automate, but I wouldn't say that it's impossible. But what it does mean is that, with anything, it frees up your time to go and do something else, right? Like, I don't fear like AI taking my job, because I think that actually it will just free up my time from doing stuff I don't want to do anyway, to go and do stuff that I do want to do, stuff that can't be done by an AI.
Yeah, you're right.
Be that teaching people, be that coming up with a new wacky visualization. And I think that the people that fear, and it doesn't even have to be AI. Like we've seen it. I see it all the time. Like people are scared to automate things because they're like, well, if I can automate it, then what am I going to do? And it's like, well, all that stuff that you want to get to that you can't get to. Like one of the first things I did when coming into this role was for our sign-up. So when people sign up to say want to come on a course, I've used Microsoft Power Automate to capture that information from a form, send them an email to say, yeah, here's your course, here's your meeting invite, put it into an Excel so I can keep a track of it. And then I don't have to do any of the admin unless someone emails me to say I can't make it, right? At no point did I think, oh no, they're going to suddenly go, oh, we can just, Sam's redundant because he's not doing all this random admin about who's turning up to a course. No, I can focus on adding value where, I can add more value than diary management.
Yeah.
So
Right.
as soon as you stop fearing AI and can see that actually it can get rid of all the boring stuff you don't want to do, like, yeah.
That's a really interesting point you make around, showing somebody when you talk about automation, showing them what's the top 10 things you want to do in this job, not what you do now, but what would you
Yeah.
love to be doing in this job, and then say what stops you, and they go, oh, I got to do all these paperwork, and go, well,
Yeah,
sorry about that, we'll automate that. That's a really
exactly.
good way of like engaging with people to just
Yeah.
get that sort of freedom of AI and freedom of automation and not worry about it so much.
Yeah.
But I
And
think,
everyone's so time poor these days. And,
yeah,
there's, I love a good process. I love following the rules. But if I can automate them so I don't have to fill anything out, I'm going to go for that every single time.
yeah, you're right. You are right. I think that's a really good way to think about it, and a probably good way to end the podcast. I think because we've been talking for a good hour and 20 minutes now.
We really have, yeah.
Honestly, it's been absolutely fascinating. I think your journey as a data analyst has been amazing, and what you're doing now with Tableau. And I really hope your channel goes super well. And remember me when you're famous. All right, come back and make sure you give me all them likes and follows. And I wish you all the best, mate. I think it's been really good to have you on. So thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.